a society that opens up new possibilities in how we think about cancer. This society of the future is already here. As long as we are human, copying errors in the cell division process will unavoidably cause cancers. Yet even in this age of advanced medical care, cancer patients cannot freely choose their treatment due to practical issues such as time, money, distance, work, and anxiety. New cancer treatment technologies enabled by advances in data and digital could usher in systems that continually collect and monitor health data of individual cancer patients and detect cancerous growths of even the smallest cells at an early stage. In the new ways we think about cancer that data and digital technologies will foster in the future, many barriers to cancer treatment will be removed. This will enable cancer patients to be aware of any changes and
Can you hear me? Okay. So the video stopped in the middle, but again, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Takafumi Horri. I'm a senior vice president of Takeda Pharmaceutical. I'm now head of Japan oncology business. So today we're gonna spend next to 25 minutes talking about the how data and digital is actually helping and then providing the next level of the solution to the better treatment and the quality for the patient, the cancer patients, as key enablers. So today's, basically, my presentation outlined the three components. I'm just starting with who we are as Takeda. And then we're gonna talk a little bit about the pharmaceutical industry, how it has been evolved in the past, and then how it will be expected to change. And then last but not least, I'd like to give you the couple of concrete examples how we actually leverage data and digital for the cancer treatment. So Takeda is a Japanese company, and then I'm from Japan all the way this time. So thank you very much for having me here. So we are actually already over 240 years old, where we have been putting a patient first over the 2 centuries, with our value of better health for the people and a brighter future for the world. So we are the value-based and R&D-driven biopharmaceutical leader in our industry, where we have, with a really clear vision, we want to discover and deliver the life-transforming treatment for the patients. We also have and maintain our value system. We called it the Takedaism in the last 2 centuries, which actually having 4 keywords: integrity, fairness, honesty, and perseverance. So that's the way we have been doing the business for a long time, and then really happy and then proud of being part of this organization. We are actually focusing on 6 different therapeutic areas: oncology, rare disease, neuroscience, GI, and also plasma-derived therapy and vaccines. We spend $4.7 billion on an annual basis for our research and development. We also have more than 200 partnerships across the globe, and where we actually have over 40 very novel pipeline across the globe. So since I'm now in charge of oncology business, so let me just introduce a little bit more about the way we are doing the business and then oncology from here. So we are truly aspire to cure cancer. So that's the whole vision of what we have been doing. And then if you look back to the history, we are actually still, we just joined the oncology in a therapeutic area back in 2008 with the acquisition of the company called Millennium in the US. So since then, in the last 15 years, we have been dramatically and then rapidly growing the presence in oncology space. So this is our executive leadership team, and then probably you feel like as a Japanese company, unlike other companies, actually, if you look at the other executive team, we have a very diverse and experienced leaders from 9 different countries. And in terms of the diversity, We have from 30s to 60s in terms of the generation, as well as we have over 30% female executive in our leadership team. I'm very proud of how we are actually leading the organization as part of the organization. So let's switch the gear to our industry. So probably I don't need to lecture everything, but I just let everybody remind you how our industry has been evolved in the last couple of decades. On your top side, you see how the unmet needs has been changed from late 18th to towards to the now. And the previous panel discussion, we talked about the COVID-19. And then how the pharmaceutical industry actually providing the solution to meet these unmet medical needs to the society. We have been evolved, but I think in the last 8 years, the biotechnology is really make a lot of difference for our industry. And then of course, the COVID-19, the major vaccine, is also used by these technologies. This is a little bit busy chart, but I just want to share how the industry has been evolved. Back in 2015, we had around $600 billion as an industry, but we have been growing around 5% in the last 5 years. And then we expect to grow around 8%, even further accelerate, driven by a lot of innovations, which actually reaching $1.2 trillion. In 2026. That's our estimation. And then the major growth driver is actually continue to be the biotechnology. And then if you double click on our pharma industry, you see the different therapeutic area, how it looks like. On your y-axis, you can see each therapeutic area's share. On your x-axis, you see the growth in the next 5 years. And then the size of the bubble actually representing the size of the market in each area. And then it's very clear the oncology is the largest and then the fastest growing in the past and then will be in the next 5 years. So I think that's a really great reflection of how high unmet medical needs we still need to tackle for the cancer treatment. If you also double click on in terms of the country as a composition of the oncology market, it's actually basically we have 5 countries: US, Japan, China, and also Germany and France. Those 5 countries is actually driving the major growth around 70% of our industry. I think that's another reflection of how the innovation is really put in place in these 5 countries, but equally, there is other parts of the world. It's also growing significantly in the next 5 years. And then one thing we cannot miss in the cancer treatment space, where I see how the data and digital is become an enabler of the better cancer treatment. A couple of keywords I'd like to highlight here, as also addressed in a previous panel discussion: the timely, intelligent, personalized, connected, and then comprehensive. So those are, I think, a couple of keywords, I think, when we talk about the data and then also digital. If you look at I'm from Japan today, so I'd like to just introduce how this health tech industry has been evolved in the last couple of years. It's growing over 50% in the last 3-4 years, which actually already reaching over $3 billion as a new industry. So it's great, and then it's evolving significantly. So now, moving forward, I'd like to give you the concrete example how we are actually working on this digital for better patient outcome. So we as an industry, we typically are providing medication or some of the services through HCP for the patients. So if you're just mapping out for pharma, HCP, and the patient, we can break into the 6 different areas where we are making a lot of efforts. starting from the very early of our value chain, such as research and development, up until the treatment outcome management, better control of the medications. So today, I'd like to focus on 3 areas which I highlight here in this order, starting from our development. So in a development space, I think this is an example how the big data is actually solving some of the challenges we have been faced. So historically, if you look at your left-hand side, historically, we are actually tackling a lifestyle disease where we have a lot of patients when we design our clinical trials. Typically, we use double randomized clinical trials, blind type. But however, recently, as we are shifting to the more target therapy, particularly in cancer treatment, we have a much less patients in each specific cancers where we face a lot of challenges, such as, because of the limited patients, it's the recruitment of the patients is actually not very fast, or that's actually end up with the increasing cost of the development. And then also, we have some ethical challenges, especially in cancer space, where we are actually having a placebo, in terms when we design the clinical trials as a group. So what we came up as an industry, where we actually are working together with academia, where we organize ALCAD Asia, one of the organization where we actually, pharma company collectively, including Takeda, is actually putting and sharing a lot of clinical trial data and then some other relevant data into this database collectively, which actually allows us to replace this placebo control arm, where we can actually resolve a couple of challenges we are facing. That's one of the really great example what we are trying to do by leveraging a big data, by having a nice technology. Second example, it's about the patient outcome. So let's take an example of the ovarian cancer as an example. So the patients in ovarian cancer, they may typically facing a couple of challenges, such as they are very busy, dealing with kids or working at the company, and then they actually miss the early diagnosis opportunity, or they are not able to go to the hospital on a regular basis. Sometimes they are not able to manage the control the medication quite on time. So we see these are the problem where we see just actually downgraded the patient outcome. So what we have been done in Japan, we actually working with the couple of IT companies who develop and provide the electronic medical records, with a collaboration with National Cancer Center, to collect over 700 cases in the last 5 years, to just mapping out their patient journey, and then identify a couple of the point where how the final outcome has been deviated from our expected outcome. In that way, we actually try to identify some of the points where the patients can improve in a different way. So this is actually backed by the technology, of course, big data, but of course, we also using deep learning and an artificial intelligence here, and we are using also cloud infrastructure. So we are actually leveraging this technology as an enabler to just accelerating to understand how the patient will be treated moving forward. So I think this is still ongoing, so haven't see the final result, but I'm hoping that we can publish some insight for after as soon as possible once we complete these studies. My last example is about the information provision for the drug information. So this is a typical area, people like myself and a major of my organization, actually how we communicate with customer, like HCP. But I think in a previous panel discussion, we also agree the pandemic actually changed and then accelerated the way we communicate, right? So let's take an example of another cancer called multiple myeloma. This is a disease which is very complex in terms of a lot of different treatment depending on the regimen. So it's very difficult to understand for the patient, and also even physicians. It's a lot of complex treatment available in the market. So it's hard to understand. And then of course, in nowadays where we are implementing the hybrid working environment, people has a different preference in terms of the way they communicate, they get the information. So I think this kind of trend is actually, it's not going to come back to the pre-COVID period. So where we actually driving the way we change to engage with the customer as well as the other patients. So if you look at the right-hand side on the screen, you see a lot of different components of the way we engage, and then maybe a couple of people in this floor actually providing similar support, and then each individual components is already probably available. But what's the beauty here is we are actually seamlessly connected and then orchestrated so that we can have a better right timing, right contents, and then right channel through by using those technologies. So these are the things we are now driving. Particularly, we are driving and accelerating in the last 2 years after we see the pandemic. So after I share a couple of examples of how we have been leveraging data and digital in our industry. Particularly today, we're focusing on the oncology and then the cancer patients. But I think it is clear you cannot work alone. It's very clear we should work together collectively from a different angle. A lot of key stakeholders, we have to be very inclusive and then develop our partnership and the collaboration to come up with the new solution for us to bring the new solution. So. So this is the way I'm hoping that we can have a continuous discussion in the next 2 to 3 days, and then I stop my presentation here, and then I can return some of the times to catching up the other time. But thank you very much having me here, and then thank you very much for your listening. Thank you.
Take any questions? Any questions for Mr. Horri?
So my question is great presentation. First of all, I like the way the comprehensive look that Takeda is trying to take. The question is around most of the cancer gets diagnosed stage 3 onwards. For most of the patients, it is always stage 3 plus. Stage 1 and 2 cancer, we barely diagnose. So anything that you have it in mind as Takeda, where you think that we can help at a very early stage diagnosis of a cancer?
Thank you. So the question is the early diagnosis, right? Yeah, I think it's a great the question. Thank you very much for asking. I think the early diagnosis can be used by using some of the personal medical devices where we connected. Particularly in Japan, just give you the example, we have been developed a couple of the small, very interesting city. It's called a smart city, where they are driving the different ecosystem within that city as a pilot to really make a difference for the people who are living. So even before you get diagnosis for any cancer or some serious disease, people get acceptance and then to share their personal information, and then where they can just correct those information. That can be a good trigger, much earlier stage to come to the diagnosis, so that we can identify a couple of potential disease moving forward.
Like for other diseases other than cancer, it's happening. Just especially about cancer, it is like stage 1 and 2, if you look at the distribution, that how many patients we diagnosed at stage 1 or 2. So more, around 70-75% patients are stage 3 onwards. So they never got diagnosed, and by the time a patient has reached stage 3, it is barely reversible.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a like sort of a challenge. So I think like a smart city could be one answer, but is there anything like we are trying to do more so that the distribution gets reversed and we are able to identify that 70% patients at stage 1 or stage 2 when it is reversible?
Yeah, I think we don't have a perfect solution from the example from Japan, but what the government is really trying to do is just pick up the cup of the cancer, which is the largest cause of death, and then incentivize each provincial government to try to provide the much earlier health check to identify in the earlier stage so that we don't need to suffer much. So that's something we are driving as a part of the initiative. So maybe I hope I can answer your questions. Thank you for the questions.
Hi, great presentation. Thank you very much for that. I'd just like to ask about adoption. Obviously, you're using a range of quite advanced techniques there to address a significant problem. Can you talk about how you've enabled adoption of your people and clinicians and patients through using the technology? Because we find that's one of the critical success factors as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think that adoption rate is really key challenges, particularly. So we actually do a micro-segmentation in a particular customer, by dividing the different customer segment, where we look at the other generations, we look at the way they are using smartphones. So we are actually looking at the very details of each customer, which one is the best way for us to engage, or even the patient side as well. But I think, intuitively, you feel maybe the elderly generation, they don't want to use a smartphone, whatever, right? But I think what we have been found recently, particularly during the pandemic period, where the grandparents cannot meet with their kids or their grandchildren so quickly, and then where they're actually using more smartphones to talk and then chat with their grandchildren, which actually improve the way they are using and get used to those devices. So I'm actually very optimistic in terms of the adoption, but still there is a certain population where they prefer the face-to-face, or you come to the hospital or whatever. So these are the patient segment we have where we serve in a way they want. But I think there is some dynamics changes even in the last 2 years. So that's what have been observed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mwiriki Kiula from Kenyatta University, teaching referral and research hospital. Now, we are operating in the emerging segment of quality care in the African continent. We are moving from your presentation from the scientific approach of control group, placebo group for research on medicines and vaccines and the others.
Yeah.
Now the pathway for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials was very clear. Now when we begin moving from that model to now the control group plus historical data, and realizing that we have challenges with already existing classification, for example, ICD-10, hoping that there will be corrections when we get to ICD-11 on the World Health Organization classification of diseases. And then, of course, also operating from very different platforms. They are global standards, but they are yet to come together so that we are producing standard systems for healthcare institutions. Would you speak to the element of the quality of data so that if you're using control group plus historical data, then you're not using garbage to be able to inform the kind of medicines or vaccines you're going to have in the future? Thank you.
I think you ask a really million-dollar question because when it comes to the data, you take an example of the clinical trials, but regardless of any initiatives, I think the quality of the data is really playing a really important role. Where we have some good stuff, but at the same time, we also have a lot of things we learned from the what we have been tried before. So the example I shared today is actually still we already kicking off, but we haven't concluded some result. And then I'm hoping that we can get in touch and then we share some of the lessons learned from us so that we can improve collectively, for our usage of the data moving forward. But thank you for the question.
Fantastic. I think that's all we have time for. Okay. All right, one more.
Maybe last one?
Yep, the last one.
So looking at this from the mental health perspective, how do you motivate your patients to motivate them and complete this whole process?
Sorry, the question is how you motivate?
How do you motivate your patients to complete this whole process?
For which initiative you are talking about? For everything?
The whole process, yeah.
Okay. I think I would like to go back to the way we talk about the smart city as an example. Because people, and depending on the country, the way people who react to their personal information is very different. So I cannot speak for the only one group, but I think the way we are trying to motivate each person to share the data is actually really, I think they have become very open when people can trust the society they are living. So that's more like an emotional part, and then it's nothing to do with maybe technology or the maybe logic, maybe more like a very emotional part, how the people feel safe and then trusted in a community where they belong to. Some of the institutions, they are actually providing data. So I think that's one of the key where we are trying to create the better trusted community, at least for some of the area they are trying to now running as a pilot project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Horri. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.